When you hear music like this, or music like this, you probably think, what's going on? And this is contemporary music. This is where we have ended up after this. And this. We are into This is 2023, my friends. And today I'll introduce you to a very good American composer. His name is Brian Field, and he cares about the climate change. So this piece is called Glaciers. What is great about working with living composers is the fact that we can communicate. And I can ask Brian, what exactly did he mean? How freely can I interpret his metronome marking or dynamic marking? How to interpret certain rhythmical elements? So we are working on this piece together. And the second interesting thing about working with living composers is how do I know what style they have chosen? So you know, when we are dealing with Baroque music, for example, of course we always have the visual reference to how the visual arts developed during the Baroque times. And we also know the language, the musical language that was used back then, which is the polyphony, where you put many voices together and all the voices function at the same time. And people were used to listening and appreciating this polyphonia, many voices, like I've just played some Bach. This is one voice, second voice, third voice, many voices together. Should practice this. Then the classical era started, and also we knew the rules both in the visual arts and in the music, that there is a certain accompaniment, also called Alberti bassi, and then the melody would do her or his or it thematical work, and then we get so it's very typical Mozart, when things are very clear. There's an accompaniment and there is a melody. In the Romantic era, the focus turned towards people's personal suffering, individuality, and the harmony changed. The sound became much more suspended. The whole musical industry changed as well. Liszt has started the concerts and appreciation of the audience. The Paganini was creating all sort of legends about, you know, relationships with devil that attracted the audience, and the tickets were sold. But it was all around, circulating around the individuality, and the music became much more emotional. Impressionism followed, and during Impressionism, of course, we have this strong reference to the visual arts, where we can identify certain very small differences in the sound, in the tone, in the color. Almost we can smell the music. We can almost appreciate the finest detail of the music. Or and then, after the First World War, we have the influence of jazz, we have neo-Baroque, neo-classicism, neo-romanticism, we have neo-folklorism with Bartók. Stravinsky comes as a great artistic and cultural shock with his ballet russe. We had everything. First of all, we got rid of tonality as such, so tonic dominant didn't make sense. So Bach, Schoenberg and Webern, they started experimenting with the atonal music. Is almost mathematical approach to the music, and it sounds like and I adore atonal music, or I don't play enough because it does require a certain mentality of a very introvert individuality, both from the performer but also from the listener. And then we got into this incredible musical giants such as Bartók and Hindemith and Shostakovich and of course Litoslavsky, Penderecki. There is a whole list of greatest composers who lived pretty much between the First World War until now. And then we had this big era of minimalism when it was all something like was Steve Reich and Philip Glass, where it was all about the rhythm. Things like that. And only 30 years before that, we had and in the same soup, we also had a Ligeti, who decided to compose a piece consisting of only 2 notes. And then we are in 2023, and how do composers even create their work right now? And here with Brian Field, it's very clear, because it's not so much which technique do I use to compose, but what am I talking about? It talks about one of the most important subjects, which is the climate change. He's created a wonderful musical cycle. When the first movement talks about the fires, the second about the glaciers, and the third one about the wind. And because my album is all about the slow music, I have decided to record only the second movement, the glaciers. And here he is chosen a very particular style where it's all about imitating the cold, the ice, and how it melts, and how at the end you will hear how these glaciers fall and what a disastrous, horrible sound it creates. But at the very beginning still, it's almost like a choral, a very peaceful but very cold situation. So we are imitating the temperature, the cold temperature, by using a very high register of the piano, a very clear harmonies, very precise harmonies. And being a very good composer, he understands that music needs to have a certain development. So at some point he adds a little bit of melody. And I'd like to draw your attention how Brian is using a very regular rhythm. Almost to me, it's a time that we are not gaining, but really losing with the climate change issues, but also the very quiet dynamic. So it doesn't go beyond mezzo piano. It's all very, very quiet. And the bass that gives the sense of dimension. After this very quiet and still and cold atmosphere, listen to what happens in the music. So the dynamic changes completely. We are into fortissimo, and we are immediately visualizing the glaciers falling. And there's this very sudden, very immediate, and quite scary sound. And the contrast between a forte and piano is unbelievable. So it happens also a little bit later in the piece. At the end, he's using this very technique that is called the cluster. So just the ending. I'll play you just the ending. Let's support living composers by playing their music and appreciating it. Never lose the ability of being curious, because it is really, really beautiful.